So first up, I'd like to introduce Catherine Fisher. She's the owner, founder, and CEO of an independent production company called Speed of Joy Productions. As most people in this room are probably interested in, she has started her own production company from scratch. Gone on to have projects that are Emmy nominated. They are mostly digital short form narrative, but they're starting to go into bigger projects. Her approach is more one big project a year as opposed to a lot of smaller things. I'm gonna let her talk about that. But anyway,
Great.
it's your room.
Okay. Hi. So yeah, my name is Catherine Fisher. I started Speed of Joy Productions about 3.5 years ago. My background is actually in nonprofit event management and direction of nonprofit videos, documentaries. I've worked in Kenya, Democratic Republic of Congo, UK, in Standing Rock recently last year. But I started Speed of Joy I'll stand up. I started Speed of Joy to create a show called Her Story, which was nominated for an Emmy back in last year, not this last Emmy, the one before. And it was a digital media short form web series about the dating lives of trans and queer women in Los Angeles, and it was narrative. It was written, starred, created by, directed by, and the entire crew were all members of the LGBTQ communities, mostly women. The series went on to get a Gotham, a Peabody Award. It was nominated for an Emmy, and it got a GLAAD Award as well. So that really kind of launched my production company and made it into something that, for me, and the whole reason for making it was very much to create a company that lived at the intersection of art and activism, which is how I had been, conducting my life for 10 years, before that. So we focus on projects that are created by underrepresented communities and projects that are representing those communities accurately and with authenticity and nuance. We've done, obviously, Her Story. We did a short film for director Rosie Haber called Ink. We did a Keeping the Sarah music video, all of which are focused on different areas or different communities, LGBTQ, homeless youth, things like that. In terms of, and obviously documentary work as well, like I mentioned. So in terms of starting a production company, I came at this from, again, I'm a creative producer. Logistics, business are not my forte, so I had to kind of really learn on the fly, and I'm still learning, and I'm making all the mistakes that everybody makes. I'm still making those mistakes, but I'm happy to answer any questions about those mistakes and about what went right, what went wrong. In terms of key takeaways, for me, the biggest challenge, the biggest hurdle was really, again, figuring out the business side. So biggest thing I would recommend is talking to somebody who knows business managers, CPAs who can handle, budgets, finance, stuff like that. Because if you're a creative producer, if you're on the more creative side, that is stuff that probably doesn't come super naturally for you. If it does, then more power to you, and talk to me later because I need your help. So yeah, I'd love to actually answer questions just because it's just me up here. So I have a very specific view. I know there's going to be other panelists who have much bigger companies who, do more projects per year, who can speak to various aspects that I can't. But that's me. So if you have any questions that are, for this kind of world, let me know. Yes.
Can you speak more on why you enjoy doing one project a year?
Yeah.
Benefits, pros and cons.
The cons obviously are money. We don't have as much kind of income coming in. We're not working with as many people. We're not generating as much. But I do it because I like to be involved personally with every aspect of production, and I like to be very focused on one thing, just so that I can make it the best that it can be. That's how I work. The production company is literally me. I work with people like, to be great, we're involved with a lot of panels here, Julie because there's a lot of people that I bring in and who I consistently work with, and I work with them on their projects as well. But Speed of Joy is just me, and for me to feel confident in the quality of the product that we're putting out, I really can't focus on my own. The question is, where are we getting our funding? For her story, that was completely self-funded. We also did a really comprehensive crowdfund campaign, which actually started after we shot, and that was on purpose. We wanted to show that we could create quality content that would get made, that would be put out there. So we had a whole behind-the-scenes crew on set as we were filming the series, so that when we got to the crowdfund aspect or part of the program, we had things to show, which really helped us raise about $50,000, which all went towards post-production and also paying back some of the loans and things that we took out to actually pay for production. So her story was totally self-financed. Tegan and Sarah was financed by the record label, so that was fairly easy. They came to us. And then everything else has been private donors, funders. We've partnered with one short film, Ink, that we did was through the AFI DWW program, which gives you access to other donors that we might not normally have. So it's all pretty much private funding. The question was, are the projects coming from us or being brought to us and then taken out? Tegan and Sarah obviously was brought to us. The other projects, her story was created in-house with the people that I knew, and like I said, I created the company specifically to create her story. So that was the jumping off point. Obviously the goal was to keep making things after that, but that came from the very beginning, from us, from myself, and creators Laura, Zach, and Jen Richards. The other projects usually start with an idea. I've so far only have worked with people that I know personally, or that are in my circle in Los Angeles, that are in kind of the circle of people that I know in Los Angeles. So it's never. I don't take submissions necessarily. I don't. I certainly don't go out and try to find things, but it's usually more of an organic kind of. These are stories that are interesting, that are different, that we want to tell, and we want to tell the right way. The question is finding the right donors, figuring out what project would suit who and why that would be of interest to them. But yeah, no, it's a question of looking at your lists, going out there, talking to people, figuring out if there are organizations, grants, companies. A lot of companies will match donations, so finding people in places like Google or I think Google does it, but I'm not sure who else, who will match donations. So people that work there, having them donate and then having their company match has worked successfully for us a few times. Things like that. But yeah, no, for the most part, and in terms of other companies, it's about finding people that are like-minded. And in my case, because it is a very kind of connection between art and activism, it's both a positive thing because that can really bring people. You can gauge interest by telling them more about why this is important work and not just important but entertaining. But that can help you kind of figure out what other maybe production companies or what other platforms might have kind of be in alignment in terms of the vision for this project, and then you can court them as you do. But yeah, I've never had an experience where someone comes to me with a bunch of money and wants to make something. Weird. I was having a conversation with someone else the other day. They were just like, yeah, so people come to you and they want you to make money or make a movie and they give you the money. I'm just like, no. Nobody gives me money. It's always an idea, which is great. But then you have to find the money and then you have to pay yourself, which is probably the hardest part so far is actually making money because in this line, when it's super independent, it's, very close-knit, a lot of it's going online where there isn't, a lot of access from, Her Story was released for free online. That was on purpose. We wanted it available to everybody, regardless of location, regardless of income. We wanted people to be able to see it because it's, it dealt with issues that were really important and that, were important to people that might not have access to a Netflix subscription or whatever. So there's no money coming in on that. You kind of figure out how to make that work for you. So the biggest challenge so far has been to, how do we make a living out of this, and that's hard. Yeah, I started it as an LLC, mostly just, liability-wise, it made the most sense, money-wise, it made the most sense. Just having something that wasn't connected to me personally was key. Just with film production, as you all, I'm sure, know, there's so many things that can go wrong, there's people that can get hurt, there's things that can happen, and obviously don't want that to be connected to me personally. So the LLC is really helpful for that. What we did do, though, we're obviously not a 501c3, but what we did do with 2 of the projects was we got fiscal sponsors. So when we were asking for money, we were able to make those donations tax deductible through fiscal sponsor, which is very appealing for a lot of people. Really anything to do with business, I've messed up the first time. I just have. It's not something that comes naturally, and the things that have been more of a smooth transition are things where I have actually really tried to lean on people that I know that can help me. But even setting up the LLC was something that I knew that I needed. I knew that I needed that, but I didn't know how to do it. So I live in California, and there's an organization there that helps creatives get connected with entertainment lawyers and kind of helps them with that process. So I went to them, and they connected me with a really good entertainment lawyer who was used to helping people kind of figure things out, and really just sat down with him and was like, okay, lay it out for me, figure like how do I do this, how do I not screw myself, and how do I put it up, make it as simple as possible, and I know you want to know everything, but it's really good to know what you don't know and be okay with the fact that you don't know things. So that's why I went into it. I was just like, I don't know anything. Same with, the CPA, that he then connected me to a CPA, and then we kind of figured out the financial aspect of it, tax, all the things that I really hate. And then we just kind of went through everything to kind of make it as simple as possible. And I still email both of them probably twice a week with some stupid question, but it's really, really valuable. So the biggest kind of problem, or the biggest hurdle that I had, or kind of learning moment was like, it wasn't a specific incident where I, fucked up and there was, this huge, fallout from it. It was more just knowing that, this isn't going to get done unless I know more, and trying to figure out who can help me, with that. If that makes sense.
Is the place in LA like a place that you can say, go talk to these people?
It's a you can call them. It's specific to California because they only work with California lawyers and business professionals. But I'm sure it's somewhere else. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I can find it for you. Yeah. California is great, or LA specifically is really great, because just by virtue of being there and being out in the community, you meet so many people and create bonds with people, and you work on their projects, they work on your project. It's really great for expanding your network in that way. Smaller markets are also great. I also work in New Orleans a lot, and the great thing about that is that especially when it comes to locations or things that a lot of the bigger cities they can charge you a lot for, you have more leeway in terms of getting cheaper. I wouldn't say help, because I would say that the work itself is pretty consistently, across the board the same price as it should be. But locations, packages with camera grip, that kind of stuff, equipment, that can be a tad cheaper outside of LA. Having said that, you do create relationships with houses and with people and with people that have camera packages or whatever that can be helpful, but locations is a big one, in my experience. So there's benefits to both, and I like working all over the place because of that, and it's also shooting at home.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah.
So one of the questions that a lot of people always have starting a construction company is, how does it relate to the bigger networks? So we're here to answer that question and any other concerns you may have or thoughts you may have about how a small independent company can work with a major network. I'd like to have Kelly Evans come up, the Vice President of Talent Development at HBO.
Raise your hand if I'm in all of that. So, tell me, how many of you guys you're obviously already making content, but how many of you guys are just here on the directing side? for the most part. Okay, a couple people, writer, directors. Okay, actors. Okay, wow, and they're all over here. So they all congregated, they know each other. Phil asked me to talk a little bit about it from a network perspective. I can sort of give you a couple of different slices of this because I was a network executive for many years, but I also run something called HBO Access over at HBO, and we do have a production entity that every other year we do shoot content, and the conversations that we had about the production entity of that were really in depth before we decided how we were going to approach it, so we can talk about that. And then I was also a producer. I had a deal at Paramount for about 6 years after I had a run of about 10 years as a broadcast network executive, creative executive, and after having been in film. So we can sort of talk a little bit about a couple of different things. I can't give you a completely deep dive on the technical aspects of being, setting up your production company, because I do think that that's a lot of the conversation that you have to have with your team and you really have, there are things that you have to trigger that are a little bit outside of my scope. That's why we hire people to do that. But other than that, I'm happy to sort of give you my perspective, and then you can ask me questions you might have. So let's just start with when I had a production company. I was housed over at Paramount. I had just rolled out of I had been a SVP of comedy, ran the comedy department for UPN after working at Fox for many years. And it was a completely new world for me. The reason I did it is that I wanted to learn how to sell, because it's a very different skill set than just being a buyer and sitting back and people coming in and pitching. And I kind of feel like I wish I had gone and been a seller before I was a network executive, because I think I would have really understood that even to take the worst pitch in the world to a studio or a network takes a lot of effort. So imagine, the people who are at the top of their game, it's a skill and it's a learned skill. So I think I would have been a lot nicer, probably, listening to people pitch, a lot more patient. I think I probably would have just been a better executive. Not that I was bad, I was really, really good at it, but would have been better. So when I rolled into my production deal at Paramount, we had an overall deal, which you guys know what overalls versus term deals are?
No.
Okay. So we had an overall deal that turned into a term deal. Our overall deal, or housekeeping deal, our overall deal was they paid us a lot of money every year to create and to develop with writers and mostly writers who were sort of up and comers, because they had some big deals. They didn't really need us to bring in the big guns. They wanted the new voices. So they paid for our overhead, our assistants. We had a weekly paycheck. It was awesome. And usually when a writer gets an overall deal, it's a huge couple $1 million worth of, of a package that's housed in a studio, and that person is then creating content, but also at the same time, they might assign them to a show. So let's just say, writer X gets $10 million to sit there for 3-4 years. They're not just paying that writer just to sit there. They're also going to assign that writer to a show, an active show that needs an executive producer. So they are charging back that money. So they're making their money back. With us, they just paid us, because they weren't paying us millions of dollars, they paid us a little bit of money. And but we had our whole office space on the lot, and we had everything taken care of for us. And then what would happen is a writer would come in. So, what's your name? Yeah. June? Oh, I was going to say Judy. Look at that. June. Okay, so June would come in, and June would come in with a really great idea, and I really didn't have to do very much other than work with you on the idea and then pitch it to the studio, and the studio would then make a deal with you. So the paperwork for us was minimal. And then once we sold it to a network, we then, the deal would be made between the studio and the network. And then June would walk away with her money and her, every time she did a step in her deal. So that was the sort of how it works. And we don't really need, if you have a small production company, or if you're doing your your series, those deals really do happen at the studio level. You know, the producer who is that intermediary, we really didn't do any paperwork per se. So it wasn't like there was a contract that had to be made. It was very much like just an agreement between us. That we just assumed that if June was coming in to pitch, that June was then our person, and then we would take you around to everyone within the universe. Now there are times that an agent would say, well, you know what, June has a relationship with somebody else at a different network, so if you don't sell it to CBS, we're going to take it through someone else, you know, different production company, to sell it to ABC. Those things happened as well. You look confused.
No, I'm just absorbing.
Okay, what's your name?
Caitlin.
Caitlin, okay. Caitlin, everybody. Caitlin and June. Okay, so so that was basically what we did over at Paramount. Eventually, the deal changed to just a housekeeping deal. And our housekeeping deal, we were no longer paid our overhead. I mean, our overhead was paid, our assistant was paid, but we were no longer getting that weekly paycheck, which meant that every time we sold something, we would get paid, which meant we had to sell a lot in order to just make the kind of money that we were making before, which virtually never happened. So it's a different kind of thing. I think it's probably great for people who are independent, who are used to having that kind of scrappy mentality. But when you've come from a place where you've had that safety net, and then all of a sudden you are doing it by per deal, and there are only so many deals that you're allowed to make before the coffers run out at the studio, you're really sort of running on, you know, turbo constantly. So, so it's a little bit more challenging, but it's still, I mean, it's the best job in the world, right? Because when you get your show, and we had a show on UPN, it is literally the best thing in the world. You know, you guys know when you're in production, it's the best thing. You're making all those choices by yourself. It's the best thing in the world. So that was doing it sort of through the studio system. I now work at HBO, and at HBO, every other year, we shoot 3, I have trouble with the terminology because you can call them shorts, you can call them digital pilots, 3 pieces of content. And they're up to 15 minutes, and this year our 3 pilots that went through the process last year are now going through festivals. And I think we've probably done 8 or 9 festivals, through even just 2 of them. The last one's going through the process right now because the director ended up getting work right away as soon as he was finished with our program. But in order to do those pilots, we ended up having a really big discussion about, are we doing them union or non-union? And once we decided that because we are HBO, needed to do it union, we ended up having to make those deals with all of the unions under the ultra low budget agreement, because we weren't spending a whole lot of money on them. They really were test pilots so that our directors who came into the program would be able to work with HBO. Because, you know, it's like a who you know kind of thing. And what my philosophy was when I got in there was, we need to make sure that our company feels really comfortable talking and advocating for our directors. The best way for us to do that is to have them come work within our system so that they understand how we do business and what's important to us. So the way that we did that was we created a production company called Best Boy Productions. And, you know, we named it because it was, you know, I had to go through like a list of, well, what do we stand for and what does it mean to us? But you guys know, it's a big deal, right? It's like getting a tattoo. So we ended up calling it Best Boy Productions, and then we had an outside producer, someone who's not associated with our company, assume control of that company. And that person then made deals with all the unions, and that person runs it, and then it sort of goes dormant in the other years. So this year it's sort of not dormant. Next year we'll pick it back up and we'll do it again. So I think that's the big. Oh, I will say that things that we learned, or things that I learned that I think our producer already knew, was, you know, that there are so many things that you need to make sure that you're taking care of. So when we went through the whole process, it's, you know, she had a production service agreement with our company, but it's things like You know, all of your all your artwork and all your names, are they cleared? You know, is your music licensed? We had a couple of situations, even when we were taking material from external festivals. We have a deal with ABFF and we show all 5 of their top films every year. And sometimes films come in and they're not completely licensed. So we have to make sure that music is or the artwork or whatever it is airable. So those are some of the things that you have to remember in terms of the legal aspects, or you know, just in terms of protecting yourself. That that from a network's perspective, usually those people have come in, they've already figured that out. So I think those are the big. I'm trying to think. It's licensing and clearances. Yeah, I think that's the big stuff. Does anybody have any questions so far? Yeah, but I think you have to remember things have changed. So back in the old days, there was no digital world, right? Back in the old days when a project would come in, it would come in just with a writer. You know, Caitlin would bring in a project and, you know, you were sitting maybe with a small team, but now that you're creating your whole world and there is a group of people who are coming in, my guess is then you take a look at it and you try to figure out from the production company side, not necessarily from the network, but you're partnering with a production company who is going to help you make your days, you know, make sure that you're on schedule, make sure that you can be aired, make sure that quality control is all done and all that sort of stuff. So there's going to be a team, but usually if you are coming to us with a concept, more than likely we are going to then put you with this production company or a studio that's going to give you a framework, right? Mm-hmm. We're not going to ask you to go out there and just create 8, 12, 15 episodes without any structure around you.
Right, yeah, I guess it's the difference between coming with an idea and then being paired with a production company versus a production company having been formed to realize that idea and then bring it to a network.
But I don't know that anybody would form one out of whole cloth. Do you know what I'm saying? If you are going to come with a production company, the production company you come with has a track record. Mm-hmm. If we're going to pair you with a production company, they have a track record. There's going to be a studio that's going to finance this, right? Because that production company might be one person, might be me, but I don't have $20 million to make a show.
Right.
So I need someone who's going to finance that.
Right.
So there will be, I wouldn't worry about it. Make your great stuff, and then the system is going to put their arms around you and help you make that. You know? Yeah.
So of the 3 pilots that you created, are these pilots that are kind of like presentation pilots with the intention of being a half-hour, 1-hour show? Or are these specifically for the 1-hour space? And how much? What was their budget?
I might not tell you that on camera,
Okay.
but I will tell you that, off to the side. But we were union, so that's going to tell you right away that it's going to be more than $10,000, right?
Yeah.
Less than $200,000. Does that help? What was the question again?
Were these made with the intention of being half-hour or hour pilots?
Well, okay, let me tell you what the process is and what the idea of HBO Access is.
Okay.
So I got there at HBO 4 years ago, and we had a program, a director's program, for 6 years before that. And we hadn't been able to convert the people who had come through the program into episodic directors. They would end up going off and working elsewhere. So Ryan Coogler was one of our people, Nisha Ganatra. We had Logan Kimmons. We had some great people that we had identified, but we weren't converting them into directors for our show. So I came in and I said, well, how about instead of just paying them to shadow for a year and having them shadow, why don't we make something, since HBO is a place where you can develop and create, that voice. And then we'll have a piece of material that we have then all worked with that person on, and then we can better advocate for that person on our shows. So we brought in the first year 4 people, and the second year, 3 people, we'll do 3 people in the future, just because I think it's a little bit better number. We give them 2 to 3 days to shoot, then we go 1 day off, and then 2 to 3 days to shoot. So we do it all within a very small, truncated amount of time. But that director then has a chance to go through the entire process from helping to develop that material. The material now is coming through our writers program, so our writers are creating the content, and then we will have them pare it down to a 15-minute piece, and then the directors come in, pitch on which piece they want, and then we will decide who's going to take which piece. And then as soon as we go through our 1-week boot camp, you then go directly into casting, and our production team goes into locations, everything else, costumes. So the whole thing's kicking into gear right away, and that director then has a chance to watch how HBO puts together a show just on a mini scale. So then we shoot them. We shoot them in, like I said, that 2-week block. Go right into post. The directors are involved in everything. They sit in the editing bay. They go through the editing process, the color correction, the time, everything is, the sound. It's all done with that director's input. And then at the end of it, once we're done and it's all gone off and all the assets are created and New York is happy and they have their little poster and everything, then we end up doing a big screening both in LA and in New York.
And so the directors are from the directors program?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yes.
What sort of things are you looking for in directors that you bring in the program?
What are we looking for? We're looking for somebody who's got a track record and who has his demonstrated skill. So really the first cut of it, is that me? I hear something. Okay. The first cut is really just based on your piece of material. What's your name?
Derek.
Derek, what's your name?
Brianne.
Brianne and Derek, everybody, okay. So Derek, the first cut is just how good your material is. And we've had some conversations internally about what that means. I will tell you that in the couple of years, we've only done it 2 years so far, we haven't had anybody who came in with a feature get into the program. I don't even think that the features have made it into the final selection of the program. I'm not quite sure why that is. It might be who's sending in features. It might be the fact that I think this last year we asked for a second piece of material, and I think the features came in at that point. But for the most part, we're looking for your skill level. Are you someone who works well with the actors? How good is the performance? Sometimes that's out of your control. Sometimes you might be working with somebody who's very, very green, and you're getting the best performance out of them as possible. So, but it should be your best work that you're putting forward. It's about, are you afraid to move the camera? Sometimes that's really evident in a piece. If you've just got this lockdown, camera and you don't really move, was that a stylistic choice, or was that really, you can sort of tell in the material if someone is really kind of tentative, or if they're willing to play with it a little bit and show some movement. So we really just look for skill. And then once we've gone through that process and you make it to the semifinals, we look to see if you're nuts. And if you're something that we can work with, and then it filters out really quickly. Any other questions?
So it's not like DGA people, these are
You can be DGA or non-DGA. We do this in full collaboration with the DGA. But there are certain requirements that you can't have had like a feature film released. It's like we're looking for people who need the lift. So Michael Bay is not gonna.
he's crazy anyways.
Yeah.
From an actor's point of view,
What's your name?
Luca.
Luca.
Yes.
Luca, are you friends with Derek?
I happen to
Okay, cool. Awesome.
director that's in the previous piece.
Oh, great. What's your piece?
Sir.
So?
It's called Sir.
Sir. Okay.
We haven't pronounced it in American.
Yeah.
Where are you from?
I'm from the UK, from Cardiff.
Okay. All right. Cheerio. Okay. All right. So, Luca.
The question is, from an actor's point of view, with the pilots and the pool of actors that you choose from, is that done again through a program or through people that you develop, or is that done completely as a normal casting session?
When we choose people, it's open.
It is
When it's not open to the UK.
I'm American, I'm living out there.
Okay, good. You just have, what we're looking to do is to create a group of people who can come in and work for us. And so we can really sort of shut down the external thing, the noise. But yeah, our goal is to find people who are emerging, who want to work here, who want to get noticed and to get supported. Of our first year, we had 4 people. One went to the Fox program. He's up for something at another network. We have one woman who's already been directing quite a bit. She came out of commercials, but she had transitioned into television, episodic television. She's now prepping or shooting fresh off the boat this week or last week's around this time. But she's already directed 5 episodes for Amazon. And then one guy rolled out and just decided to leave the business. And then the 4th guy is prepping a movie. So he's starting his movie. He just shadowed on Crashing for us. Strangely enough, he shadowed a director who was in our writers program, but in the ABC directors program. And that director had directed 18 episodes in 18 months. I think it was 18 or 17 months. So, the need is out there for talent. Is there any other question? Part of your question?
Yeah.
No? All right, I'm going to go over here first.
Hi, Stan Gardner. I just had a question. When you were initially talking about you have these short films that are going around or you select what becomes a pilot, does the director bring you content?
No.
Do you provide?
They did the first year. The first year we didn't have a writer's program in place. And so we asked them to be writer-directors, which we know is very, very challenging and difficult. And I think because of that, we ended up making a lot of changes. We changed a lot over the course of the last couple of years. We had a very big learning our first year. It was over the course of a month. And then we realized, a lot of our people were coming from out of town and we needed to be able to support those people. So we now only do it for 1 week. Our boot camp is 1 week before you go into, the production process. And during that week, we hand them a check for $5,000 and we say that's your living expenses. You decide how you're going to do that because you're going to be here for a couple months. So we changed a lot. We also went from having classes that were about someone coming in and saying, this is how it was when I got in the business and this is my shadowing experience, to master classes, which was amazing because we really talked very much in depth about craft. And so we had people come in and Nisha Ganatra actually came in and showed us an episode she did of a particular show. And we went scene by scene. And she said, this is how I got the actor here, and this is what happened here, and this is how this style is different than if you shoot this other show that has a very, very distinct style over here, and this is how the actors are working differently. Really, really in-depth, amazing conversations. And I will just let you guys know that the last director that we had, by the way, we had actors, we had everybody, the casting director came in at that point. We really wanted people to have a safe place to ask the stupid questions. Because at a certain point, everybody sort of assumes, I shouldn't be asking that question, I should know this by now. But we don't always know this at a certain point, and sometimes you have to go back and go, hey, but why is it like that in order to go forward? And so the very, very last person that we had speak was Miguel Sapochnik, who had just directed the last 2 episodes of Game of Thrones, right, of that season. Amazing! So he comes in, and he's such a nice guy. He comes in and he brings DVDs of both of those episodes and then walks us through, shot by shot, the openings of both of those. I guess it's the Battle of the Bastards and then the opening of the last episode. And we learned so many tricks of the trade just by him coming in and saying, you see all these extras over here? They don't exist over here. We composited all of those. So something that seems really, really big was actually a really small, he said, you see that big grand opening, and he said it was one overhead shot, and then he said he really just sort of broke it down and we said, it's just 2 overs. And that was the entire thing. It was 2 overs and then you had 1 extra master shot from a different angle. If you go back and look at the opening of Game of Thrones last episode, you'll see that it's really, I think it's 3 shots or 4 shots. And yet we all think, oh my God, I can never do that. And that's the kind of thing that I think we need to do more for everybody, is to demystify the process. Because you look at a car crash, you look at something really big, and you just go, I can never do that. I need 20,000 years of, being able to do that before I can feel I can do it. Guess what? You can do it. It's just magic, right? All right. Yeah?
I have a stupid question.
Good. What's your name?
I'm Clara.
Clara.
Yeah. How do you become someone like June in your example?
Yeah.
And how do you get considered for your writers program or your talent development?
You apply.
Okay.
It is open to women and people of color. Lucas, that does not mean that you are counted out of the process at all, because we're always looking for talent everywhere. It's just that those programs are to fill a particular need for us. So if we want to reach out and have a conversation, okay, cool. But how do you become June? You mean how do you get access to the company?
In the example that you gave earlier when you were at Paramount, that you would have a talent coming
Right.
and you guys would
Sure.
personality.
Well, we would identify her in a lot of different ways. So it's, it may be an agent, but a lot of people aren't represented by agents. So that's when we come to these things, so we get to know you. If you are a writer, I think my company is probably the only company that allows unsolicited submissions. You have to fill out the release form, but we do that. But it's the programs, and apply to the program. Here's the secret to the programs, though. When you apply to a program, if you are in that sort of semi-final round, then that company knows who you are. They've read you, and that company knows who you are. If you get to the final round, obviously, they really know who you are, and they'll be in touch with you. If you are in the program, and you get into, let's just say you get into Warner Brothers program, Warner Brothers shares that information with me and with ABC and with Sony.
So you work with all the writers programs?
Yeah, there are no walls, no boundaries. We're on a Facebook page together, because we know that if you have talent, and I can't necessarily put you to work, I need to be able to find somebody else who can. So I read all of the NBC folks this last year, and then was at a party recently and introduced one of them to somebody from VH1. So the idea is that we all know that we need to feed the beast, and by feeding the beast we need to get everybody working. There's a lot of opportunities out there right now. You just gotta, it's about who you know, unfortunately. Fortunately and unfortunately. Phil's giving me the
time.
All right, so I'm going to be around this whole weekend. My EVP of comedy, Amy Bradlett's going to be around this weekend. Here's a special tip. Don't hoard her time, but she is obviously the person who's in charge of the fantastic comedies that we make. And she's brilliant, and she's wonderful, and she wants to have a good time while she's here, so please let her have a good time. But if you feel like you want to stalk somebody, you're welcome to stalk me this weekend. And I say thank you all for being here, for being so great about just this panel, but also I'm excited that Phil's put this together. I come here every year, I have a fantastic time. And the thing that I love so much about it, besides the fact that he's just the nicest guy on the planet, and has a dad who's like the nicest guy on the planet. It's just that he's made this space here for all of you guys to get to know a lot of us in a really relaxed setting. So feel free to come, eat lunch with us, have conversations with us, hang out by the trees with us. But I want to say thank you very much to Phil for allowing for us to have this space.
Thank you.